Hi, and welcome back to Continual. It's another episode of Hot Off the Press, the show about the new releases and the authors that bring them to you. I'm your host, Jim Nettles. And so we've got a packed house, and there's going to be something for everybody. Let's go around and see what tonight's offerings are going to be. So, VJ, you are up first.
Hi, everyone. I'm VJ Allison. I'm an Indigenous romance author from Nova Scotia, Canada, and I'm so glad to be here.
Scott.
I'm J. Scott Coatsworth, and I'm in Sacramento, California, and I write fantasy, science fiction, little magical realism, little sci fantasy, and every now and then a bit of romance kind of woven in.
JB.
I'm JB Garner. I am a professional author and editor from Chicago, Illinois, and I write a little bit of everything. As long as genre fiction, I write it.
JL.
Hi, I'm JL Gribble, and I write primarily non-traditional, paranormal, and urban fantasy, and it's a little bit of romance creeping in.
Just a wee touch, a wee touch. The ghosts are falling in love. Liv.
Hi, I'm Liv Rancourt, and I write historical and paranormal romance, and I'm here in Seattle, Washington.
Leona.
I am Leona R Wisoker. I write a variety of speculative fiction, from experimental to horror, from fantasy to science fiction. I am in Sandston, Virginia.
And Elle Marie.
I am Elle-Marie Wood. I write psychological horror, but I'm diving into a little bit of science fiction and, well, a smattering of fantasy and a little bit of romance as well. Happy to be here.
Stretching those wings. Oh, now I know we're in trouble. You get tired. Are you tired of winning all those Stokers? Is that what it is?
Listen, you got to go for it if you can go for it.
So let's just start with, what are we bringing into the pile, right? What's the big setup? What's the big world we're falling into? So VJ, who are we falling in love with this time? What's the big setup?
Big setup is on vacation in the Bahamas this time around. My first ever on location story. It's a love story. Lots of steam into it, lots of swimming, lots of fun. I'm not going to go into detail because this is PG-13.
Sand gets in uncomfortable places.
Yeah. After 10 here, I'm giggling. No, basically, it's an MF story about a recovering alcoholic who meets a woman on vacation. And although he's fighting the grief of his late wife and everything, he starts up, I don't know, let's say hooks up with this other woman. And they think that it might go beyond the fun and the sun, but they don't, things end before they can find out, if their relationship is worth exploring. It's continued in the next book, though, but it's a love story is what it is.
Cliffhangers. Oh, you're coming to us with cliffhangers.
Oh, I love cliffhangers. I love driving my readers crazy. I'm bad.
All right, Scott, what have we got this time?
Okay, so I have 2.5 today, so I'm going to make it brief. Yay, right finger. So Earth 2100, I had a series of anthologies that were about changes in society, climate change, basically how the future would change as pop-punk. So there was Fix the World, and Save the World, and then Transform the World. And when I was buying the stories for Transform the World, I found a bunch of stories in the submissions that I just loved, but they didn't quite fit. They weren't either hopeful enough, or they didn't kind of deal with the cultural or government or societal change that I wanted, but I really liked the stories. So I bought them and decided to make them a new anthology, which is Earth 2100. That's coming out tomorrow. And then this one's much simpler. It's Drag Queens in Space. So that's a short story. It's coming out from the Dragon Gems collection from Water Dragon. The half is basically the River City Chronicles, which I put out about 6 years ago now, I think. I'm actually doing a new serial release for that, and that started this last week. So those will be coming out once a week on my blog. So lots of things going on.
JB?
I have my latest book, Indomitable. It's the first book of the Push Chronicles. Maybe we can. No, that's going to flip. It's not going to work.
It looks
No, it's the right way this way. It just
Oh,
looks
it looks
reversed
fine.
to you.
So
Yeah,
anyway,
yeah.
this is it is the start of a epic superhero series set in the real world to start with, but plays with altered realities, what happens when comic book rules are applied to the real world, and things like that.
It's a gorgeous cover.
Mhm.
Oh, thank you.
JL?
So for everybody who won't start a series until it's done, it's fun. Book 7 came out 2 weeks ago. It is the 7th and final book in my Steel Empire series. Steel Victory is the first one, and it's on sale for less than $1. This is the book that kind of brings a lot of things full circle. It kind of takes a lot of the both genre threads and world building issues and mother-daughter issues as the two main characters finally kind of go head to head. And then, of course, I had to pack in like a million other points of view and do all sorts of ridiculous craziness as one does in my series. But it's done.
Yay!
It's done.
It
Hooray.
feels so good.
We've only talked about all of them, so I'm very happy for you on this one. Liv, what do we got?
So we got The Accidental Necromancer, which is the first book in the Subpar Heroes series, which is a multi-author shared world. Basically, what happens to all the, we can't say superheroes without copyright infringement or something, who don't quite measure up to the heroic standards of a Marvel or whatever. So mine is the first book to come out in this series. There's a whole bunch. I think Morgan Bryce, Gail Martin has a book in this series. There's a bunch of really cool authors that are participating. And my book focuses on Brandon, who was kind of not a bad guy. He was just sort of a sidekick in the book that I released a couple months ago, who, as a result of the events of that book, suddenly has discovered that if he's out for a run, he can necromance inadvertently, like roadkill, and they follow him home. And so that's the problem that he must solve.
Well, considering the number of possum on a half shell I passed between here and Charleston this weekend, that would be armadillos for those of you who don't know what that is.
Okay.
That could be really concerning.
It does freak him out, yeah.
Leona?
All right, so I also have two things to talk about tonight. One is the first book in a new series, JL. This is one where people will be waiting, I guess, until those people will be waiting a while to start this. But I'm super proud of this one. It's taken a long time to come to fruition. Like I said, first book in the new series. It's the sequel series to the one I've put out previously, the Children of the Desert series. And I also have a collection of short stories, Nothing Changes, which is set in that same universe. And am I holding this in the right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, awesome. I can't tell. Nothing Changes is a collection of short stories set in that same universe, because I've been working in this world for probably about 20 years now, and I tend to write a lot of side matter and back matter and this and that, history and future, and most of it doesn't wind up in the book, so I kind of decided to take some of the best of it and put it into a short story or a collection form. So that's what those are, and it's a world of, I have had the worst time trying to describe this particular book and this series. After a lot of thought, I actually realized that this book, I wound up writing a romance. I did not intend to write a romance. I wanted to do an action adventure with lots of battles against good and evil and sword fights and dashing heroes and all that. And instead I wound up with uncooperative ancient evils that did not want to be vanquished, and sword fights became tavern brawls. Spoilers. Sword fights became tavern brawls and encounters with really creepy eldritch creatures. The dashing heroes became super complicated people just trying to survive. So it's really difficult for me to explain, which is annoying. Really, really annoying.
An
It looked like
eldritch
a very
horror
epic
romance.
book.
Sorry?
Looked like a very epic book, the size of it. How long
It really is. It is the thickest book I have ever written. I did not expect it to be this long. I don't believe there's any saggy bits in it, which is pretty amazing.
How many pages? I'm so curious.
Not counting the glossary and back matter, it's 457 pages.
Wow.
Whoa.
I believe the selling point for that is it could stop a bullet.
Yeah.
I like the cover on it. It's beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you. I was so pleased with the artist on that one.
Nice.
Yeah, you don't need to hold. That's not going to level a table. You just use that for the table.
Yeah. Admitted. Yep.
All right,
I finally
Elmer.
wrote a door stopper.
That's fantastic, Leona, honestly. Like I don't even know how many thousands of words that is. That's like, God.
Too many.
2 kabillion.
Like, I mean, I was like 150,000 maybe, something like that. That's just wonderful. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
Well, I am here to talk about you talked about artists. I'll talk about this art. I will put it up and see if I can get it
Oh,
close.
nice.
I like
So
that one. That
pretty.
is so cool.
I love this cover so much. Lynn Hansen, just shout out to her. So this is a collection of 3, it's like a collection of 3 old short story collections. So back in the early 2000s when I was just starting out, I had 3 collections come out, 1 in 1 year and 2 the following year. And it was the very beginning of my career. One of them might have gotten a little traction. The other 2 just kind of like, no, I don't. They just didn't. And so the stories have just kind of been there. So I finally said, I really should do something with that because there's some stuff in there, some really good stuff as far as I'm concerned. There's 99 stories in this.
Wow.
Did work now. So
That is so cool.
yeah, I thought I was holding on to a big book, but listen to me. I saw that. I was like, wow. But yeah, I'm really
you did
excited.
something impressive. You put a bunch of short stories together. That's something amazing.
And it's fun. What's really crazy about that is that when I say short stories, I really mean short. I'm a flash fiction writer. I mean, I don't really go over 1,250 words most of the time. There are a couple that go up, but not a lot, not enough to speak of. So that's kind of like, some of these things are like 1 page long and I'm like, wow, I can't believe I've got 99 things in here. But it's neat because I'm psychological horror predominantly, but this allowed me to stretch my legs and there's visceral horror in here. There's quiet. Well, that's kind of goes without saying. Psychological and quiet are hand in hand. But, those. And then there's there's ghosts, there's vampires, there's werewolves, there's zombies, all sorts of things. I got the chance to play around. And it was exciting to revisit them. Some of the stories I haven't looked at in however many years. And it was nice to revisit. And I was excited to see, that I had a specific perspective on, a werewolf way back when, and looking at how it pertains to what I think of them now. I found that to be really interesting. So I'm excited to see this come back out.
Yeah, I want to crack a joke in there about 99 short stories, but I'll be nice. But you could have written 1 new story just to push it to the triple digits.
I thought about that. I really did. And I was like, do I do it or do I not? I don't know. I just did. I wrote it afterward. So that's new. And there's a forward in here from Linda D. Addison, which is new. So I just left it because I'm like 99 will be fun if we just leave it there. There's some fresh stuff, but not any new. I don't know. Listen, I don't know. Jim, I did think about it. And that joke you're talking about, there's a Jay-Z song we could easily quote, but we don't get the chance to curse as much in here.
I know. That's why I did not crack that.
So it's like the Betty White of anthologies.
The Betty White of anthology?
Like that close to 100. I mean,
that close. Oh my God. That was terrible, but okay.
So close.
See, that would have been fun. Betty White and Jay-Z doing a mashup. All right, so,
Urban Wicked, man.
Say the line. I got 99 stories, but I stopped.
All right, before we go too far off the rails, Scott, I'm going to start with you on this one.
Yay.
All right, so who are we hanging out with in some of these varied stories? Let's talk about Flawless, because I got to hear about drag queens in space. Who are we hanging out with?
I had this idea a long time ago about this guy who called him a wildcatter. He basically was going after the asteroid belt and prospecting stuff, and that was, standard premise. And then, I don't know, there was something about this whole thing going on with drag and how it's been attacked in the media and everything. And so in this book, there is a guy named Grayson Eck, and his ship is called the White Swallow, and you probably don't want to think about that too long. He is going out to prospect an asteroid. There was actually a bar in Oakland, a gay bar called the White Swallow, which is where I stole the name from. And he is going out to pick up some of his bots that have been prospecting this asteroid, and finds out there's a guy that's trapped there that looks like he was probably trying to steal his stuff. And so his first thought is just to basically take him and throw him off and let him fly off into space, but his better angels prevail, and he takes him back to the ship. And then he finds out that this person is not who he thought he was, and it's not. Grayson is a drag queen and is gay, but it is not a romance. This is not a romantic partner, but there's a surprise that he finds out this person is not at all what he expected. So then there's a kind of flight back toward Mars, and there's a chase with pirate ships in space, and there's a glitter bomb, and there's a drag show, and then the whole thing ends happily ever after.
Some awesome ride.
Is there anybody you want to touch off on in character wise in the new serial you're doing?
Well, okay, so I'll be selfish and I'll talk about mine because I do have a story in that. It's actually one that was a reprint, but I have one called The Last Human Heart, and it is a post-apocalyptic story. It was actually done originally for Post-Apocalyptic, which was an anthology that all the characters had to be post-apocalyptic and had to in some way wear lipstick, and that was the whole premise. And so I wrote about this guy he's a cyborg, and he's mostly metal parts, but he still has a human heart. And his heart is failing, and he knows he has to give it up and get a mechanical heart, but yet there's a lot of baggage attached to that because this is one of the last parts about him that is truly human. And along the way, you find out some things that he believed were true about his origin and what happened to him and his former partner that you didn't know in the past. He didn't know in the past, but it was really kind of a fun story to do because it was sort of also a little bit of magical realism, a little bit of spooky woods and strange robotic characters and junkyards, and there's a whole bunch of stuff that goes into it. But yeah, it was one of my favorite that I've written in the short stories.
JB?
Well, we're talking characters. So the whole deal with Indomitable is, again, as I said, it starts with the real world, or a world just like ours, very normal. And our main character that we follow throughout the entire book is Irene Roman. She's a research scientist, by good old alma mater, Georgia Institute of Technology. And we follow her through what probably seems like both the best day and the worst day ever. The dean has okayed pushing through the last testing on her like magnum opus, her like life's work, but at the same time insinuating that her boyfriend of several years, who works in the physics department, has been stealing people's work from campus and might be after hers next. And so we have imminent betrayal, we have tension, we have a test that works perfectly but then leads to something that literally changes the entire world. So we have a relatively normal woman dealing with the fact that she's being betrayed. Her life is kind of falling apart, and then the world changes to people start acting like they're comic book characters. People start getting spontaneous superpowers, but reality itself seems to be altering, but not for her. She's like the one person that sees things as they were and has to deal with the world that's kind of flying off the handle. My editor liked to call this Wonder Woman meets the boys, which I can't really argue with on that one. But yeah, so a lot of it's the play between Irene and her boyfriend, who is now who's not only betrayed her, but now seems to be positioned himself as the Superman of this new world, and craziness follows.
All right, JL. So, and I know we've been following through the series, but who are we hanging out?
So the two main characters of this one are still the mother, who's Victory, who's a vampire, and she is the master of the city, of her city, basically by default, because she's one of like 3 vampires who lives in the city, and the other 2 don't want the job. And her adopted daughter, Toria, who followed in her mom's footsteps for a while, did the whole mercenary thing, but now she's like, no, I'm gonna go be a science nerd. But unfortunately, the world is changing drastically because of events from previous books, and the city that they live in is under threat, and both of them basically have to do things that they thought that they'd put behind them in order to try to save the city. And then this also brings them into direct conflict. So it's been kind of fun to do an arc where in the first book in the series, Toria is like barely 20. She's still very much like finding her place in the world. And this book is a solid decade later, and she's not a kid anymore. Even though from her mother's centuries old perspective, like, no, she's always going to be a kid. And so they basically place different values on the threats that the city is under, and this leads them to direct confrontation with pretty tragic results that they then have to deal with.
Are you happy to be wrapping this one up?
So the first book came out in 2015. I did really good, and there was a book a year for a while, and then events that shall not be discussed happened, which turns out, and back in 2016, when I first outlined out the whole series, I got a new job working I'm a medical editor for my day job. I got a new job working in infectious diseases. I had a great idea. And then it turns out that writing about a pandemic during a pandemic is not so great for your mental health. And that is why this book got delayed a little bit. But I'm happy with it. And I'm excited for this part of the world to be over. But I already have one book out that takes place in the same universe with the same characters, because I'm not done with the world. I still have a ton of characters that I love. And now I'm writing paranormal romance.
All right, Liv. Tell us a little bit more about our poor accidental necromancer and, his pet raccoons.
So I think that what interested me about this story is, back in the early 80s, I picked up a book called The Vampire Lestat, right? Mm-hmm. And when it first came out, loved it. Loved Lestat. And then later on figured out, oh, there's a book before that, Interview. Okay, so let me read that one. And boy, I have just never liked Lewis. Like, he just never, it's because I first saw him through Lestat's eyes, right? So and it will connect to this book. I took a character who was not all that great a guy in The Richmond Vampire and made him a hero in this book, and sort of got into the weeds a little bit on why he behaved the way he did and what happened, and how he's not so much trying to make amends, but trying to learn to live with himself and live with the guilt. And to be, becoming a necromancer is sort of like that. It's the final step to being the person that he really didn't want to be. And in the end, well, I don't want to give the end away there. But he does meet really fun, his love interest, because it is a romance, is Stefanos, who is a veterinarian to the paranormals in town. Like, he has to leave one time he gets a call one time because the mother of an owl shifter wants to talk about puberty in her 13-year-old owl shifter daughter. And, Stefanos is like takes care of werewolves, helps get a snake that got stuck mid shedding his skin, and I don't know. It's a little bit goofy, but the whole premise is a little bit the world is a little bit goofy. So, I think I'm the one that leans the hardest into the paranormal, but it does sort of fit.
So, Leona, who are we diving into with your massive tome?
So there's two main characters. There's a couple other point of views here and there, scenes, stuff that the reader needs to know that the main characters couldn't possibly know about and don't need to. You have Tank, who was trained from a young age to be a disposable weapon. He survived when he wasn't supposed to, and he fought for the right to live his life on his own terms from that point on. And then there's Leah, who comes from the other end of the continent. Tank's very much to the south of the continent. Leah's very much to the north. She was raised to be subservient to a really conservative government and religion. She refused that framework in favor of becoming a weapon herself, in order to protect her family and herself from said conservative government and religion. Now, given that they come from completely opposite parts of the continent, they should not be crossing paths. And yet, the gods tend to laugh when you say should. So they wind up crossing paths, and they're dealing with a world that, like JL was saying, is changing very drastically from events in the last series. And they wind up running into some really interesting situations where their secrets cause problems in ripples as they go down the road, and they wind up having to work together a lot more closely on a lot weirder things than they ever expected.
Elle Marie, who's somebody?
Well, since
who,
this
yeah,
is
I know. Since
What?
it's the short stories, but what are a couple of the favorites?
Yeah, I have one that I'd love to talk about just as a teaser to what you can, kind of expect from the book. But then again, that's really not true, right? I told you there's a whole bunch of different subgenres of horror. So I don't know, but here's one that I really remember. I remember writing it and I loved reading it again. And it was just a lot of fun. And it's really, really short too. It's called Flowers, and it's sort of in the beginning of the book. And so I chuckle. That's when I say what I say next, you're going to be like, why was she chuckling about that? But the memory of writing it was wonderful. So there's a funeral procession, and they're at the, you see what I mean? They're a graveside. And, that portion of the service is over. People are leaving, getting back into the cars and limousines that have, gathered at the cemetery. And that's a cemetery that has a bunch of people from, this individual's family buried there. So this guy figures, okay, I'll go visit some graves. And there's like so many flowers here for this one person. I'll just take a couple and put them, on these other graves. And so he proceeds to do so. And he, because it's a huge cemetery, so nothing's that close. He has to get back in the car and drive down to the other grave marker, the other street where the graves are. And his car won't start. He's put the flowers in the car won't start. People are in the car. Everybody's like, what's the matter? We just drove up here. What's the problem? No one can figure it out. They start, opening the top, looking through it, trying to figure out what's happening under the hood. And no one can figure it out. So they're like, well, just take these flowers up so they don't wilt in here. They take them out and put them back on the ground. Car turns over. And they drive away. So it's like those little, and what's creepy about that is that's an actual story that happened in real life. I was there for that. I witnessed all that. So that's why I chuckle when I say this was a fun one to write, because I saw that happen.
That is cool.
Right?
That is, yeah.
Freaky.
Yeah, so there's pieces, little snippets in there like that. I mean, that story might be, if it's 350 words, I'd be surprised, which is fun, because it has a beginning, middle, and end. So it doesn't just feel like a snippet of something. And I enjoy that. I like to, as you can tell, I like to sort of stretch my legs with things. And so it's a it's almost practice when you're writing, certain different lengths and seeing if you can make a story come together. So that was a lot of fun doing so, which hence the chuckles, not because of what actually happened, but the chuckles were because of the opportunity that I took to try and hone my skill a little bit more. Fun time. So there's a lot of stories like that in there. So that's kind of fun.
I actually relate to that a great deal because in Lies of Stone, I took something that happened in real life to a friend of mine. He'd always had a lipoma on his back about the size of a golf ball, just a fatty mass. It didn't bother him at all. Well, he got a bite from a brown recluse spider on that spot.
Ooh.
It was not pleasant.
Oh.
And us being the weird people that we are, he had me taking pictures and documenting as the doctor was taking care of it, and the doctor thought we were complete lunatics.
Yeah. I can only imagine.
I used it in this book. I found a way to use it.
Cool.
Oh my gosh.
Cool.
I thought you were trying to tell me that was a partially absorbed twin.
Oh.
Is that the illustrated edition?
But thank you. Now I have yet another idea.
Yeah, is that the illustrated edition of the book with the pictures?
Sorry?
Is that the illustrated edition of the book with your pictures?
Nobody wants the illustrated.
No. I actually got rid of those pictures a long time ago. I got rid of those a long time ago. I don't even want to remember what it looked
Freaky,
like.
though.
All right, VJ, save us from me asking any more dumb questions.
I forgot to mention the name of my book. It's called Could Have Been. It's book 4, My Feathered Tart. What?
Oh, that's important. Title's important.
Yeah, exactly. Titles are important. It's after 10 here. I had a long day, so excuse me if I seem a little bit kookier than normal. Okay, Could Have Been is book 4 of the Feathered Tartan series, which starts with my debut novel, Stricken. The entire series is about the 3 different cousins from the Campbell family out in Alberta. They all moved to Nova Scotia, starting with Ewan in book 1. Dana is featured in book 3, and Could Have Been features Joshua. Basically, he's down there. He became an alcoholic after his wife died unexpectedly of a brain aneurysm. That comes out honestly, so I can say that. He's sent there by his cousin, Ewan, and his brothers. And while he's there, he meets up with this beautiful redhead named Lauren, and they hang out. They have breakfast together. They go snorkeling together, and then things get steamy. Okay? White hot steamy, okay? I can't go into detail on exactly what was going on, but I think we can all, where this is PG-13, I'm going to just say spicier than, oh goodness, a basket full of ghost peppers. Is that a good analogy? But tragedy happens after he asks her to come home with him. He wants her to come home with him to Alberta, meet the family. He wants to explore to see if everything is, everything could go beyond what they had down there in the Bahamas. But just as she's going back to her room, his brothers show up. One of his grandfathers have died, not the Campbell grandfather, his mother's father. And as long they try waiting for her and she's still not back, and they just assume that she's not coming, and they leave, and well, she was on her way, she just got delayed. And they don't know, he gave a fake name, so she's here. Oh no, she can't find him. He only knows her first name. He doesn't know what room she was in or anything. It was just like a whole bunch of series of errors, I guess you would call it. And at the very end, he slips back into the alcoholism. And, well, I'll say this because it's in the blurb. She realizes she's pregnant. And this is continuing on in the story I'm writing right now. So, yeah, it's going to be wild. It turns out that she's Nova Scotian. And I can't really go into detail because I don't know what's going to happen next. I'm just starting the new book. So it's out on Ecstasy Books now, but I'm I don't have a paperback copy because at the time of taping here, it's not even up on Amazon yet. It came out May 3rd. That's how new this book is. So it's only like about 32,000 words. It's like very short for even me, and I write the shorter romance novels. So it was an interesting book to read. I wrote half of it in 12 hours in one day. I just parked my butt in the chair and just went.
Wow.
Yeah, that was exhausting, but it was fun. I just wanted it done. And it turned out a lot better than I hoped. So my editor liked it. Hi, John. That's my editor, John, at Ecstasy. So I'm tired.
Well, yeah, one of the most fun parts, right? And one of the best things about being a writer and a creator is, of course, what do you learn along the way? Sometimes it's in the process. Sometimes it's like what we learn about ourselves and doing it. Sometimes it's the rabbit holes we trip down and get a foot caught, twist it, and then go rolling down the hill into, whatever the love romance of the day is. Or, then raise an animal from the dead. You never know what we're going to trip into. So, JB, what'd you learn this time? What rabbit hole did you fall down? What'd you learn in the process? What'd you learn?
Well, I learned a lot of things. I learned, obviously, I learned a lot more comic book lore than I even knew before, and I've always been a comic book girl. But more importantly, probably more useful to life, is going through pondering how a world where all the rules have changed, but people act as if the rules have changed, but the rules really haven't changed. It let me think a lot about how our world works, how people think, how we operate, and how much things could change and the repercussions thereof. So a lot of deep societal thought, a lot of that. That's the main things I learned, I guess I would say, from writing this.
JL, how about you? What rabbit hole did you trip down? Was it just a big feeling of relief because it's done? Did you discover something in your medical research that snuck its way to the page?
Well, so because I had so much difficulty writing this, I ended up having to do a lot of soul searching and trying to figure out why that was, and ended up doing a lot of research, not necessarily specific to the book, but just specific to me in general. And I learned how to better advocate for myself and walked away with an adult ADHD diagnosis, and finally was able to get the care and treatment that I needed for that, and am now writing again much more successfully. So that was probably on the one hand, yes, I'm glad the series is over. And that's, 7 books is an accomplishment in and of itself, but also to finally figure out how to life better, and how to life more effectively, this late in the game, because and I'm not unique in this. Certain events of a couple of years ago kind of broke a lot of us who were masking pretty effectively. And then when everything changed, we were like, I don't know how to do life anymore. And so now I'm a lot better, and things are good. So I'm excited to, be back to writing and remembering why I like writing. And it no longer feels like pulling teeth, which it did for 2 years. So
excellent. Liv, how about you? What'd you learn this time?
This is not probably nearly as deep and meaningful as some of what other people have discovered, but I learned I could write 13,000 words in a day because this was my NaNoWriMo project. And for reasons, I was behind, and I woke up on November 30th and thought, crap, I'm only at 37,000 words. Can I do this? And I did. And then I sort of set it aside and didn't look at it. And when I went back and read it, it didn't suck. Like the last chunk of, I was like, whoa, where'd that come from? Who wrote that? So yeah, that was my take home from this. When necessary, I can actually crank out a whole bunch of words.
Leona? Oh, bless you.
Excuse me.
Yeah, my allergies want to kick in still.
I learned that I have grown a great deal as a writer in the last 20 years because this story was what kicked off the other series. So what happened is I had written a book called Kingdom of Salt, and I was workshopping it with my writing group at the time. And it was a bad writing group. It was one of the toxic ones where you tear each other down instead of building each other up. It's my fault. I was in charge. I didn't know better. Mea culpa. But somebody told me that Tank was a terrible character and that she hated him and he was unsympathetic and all these terrible things, and I got mad. So I'll show you. I'll write a book that tells you just how great he is. Well, 6 books later, that hasn't actually happened. But along the way, I kept writing, revising this original Kingdom of Salt story over and over and incorporating what I've learned. And when the Children of Desert series finally finished, I came back to this first story and said, okay, let me really beat this thing into shape and make it what it needs to be with all the changes and everything I've learned. Mm-hmm. And it was a lot of work, and it is a way different story than I started out with. The original story was terrible. The Tank was a terrible character. I completely agree now. But now he's back to being my favorite, and I love the story, and I'm just so proud of how I took everything I've learned from writing those other 6 books and created this. It is absolutely astounding to me that I pulled this off.
Marie?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, I really enjoyed the look back at my, 20 years ago self writing, 20 plus years ago self writing these short stories, because it's in some areas you can see the growth, and in some areas I can think, gee, I kind of, I researched that pretty well. I mean, I think the same way. These pieces are true, and I didn't miss anything. And that was kind of nice to see that, because you're always trying to hone your skill. There's no time when you should stop. You should stop trying to write better, if you will. And there are different ways we do that. But I was kind of pleasantly surprised that some of that stuff, look, I could have written that today, and that's saying something from where I thought I was at that moment. You feel so green. You feel so, even though I was out of college and I didn't put the stories that I wrote when I was 7 in here. You know what I mean? These are not those stories. So there are, I thought that, well, I kind of had it, but there was more to learn. And in some cases, sure. I mean, sure, that comes with age, right? But some of those, I was kind of on it with some of those stories, and I was kind of excited to see that. So what did I learn? I don't know. There's always room for growth, but sometimes it's nice to sit back and actually see yourself for where you are, because sometimes we're not looking. We're just running. And looking back at these old stories and deciding to use them in this, a new collection was eye-opening in a really fantastic way, because it made me sit back and look and say, and not to pat yourself on the back or anything, but hey, you always have taken this seriously. So good on you for being serious about your craft. So it was kind of nice to see.
BJ, how about you?
Well, when I first started out, I said I will never write a series, and words to the wise, never say never. Because
also never write a series.
Exactly. Stricken started out as a standalone, but I wasn't 100% satisfied. So, I decided to, after talking it over with one of the ladies that are very high up in ecstasy and a couple other people I know at the publisher that handles the Feathered Tartan series and a couple of standalones I have there, I decided to write an epilogue for these characters, and I thought, well, gee whiz, I might as well just continue it on. I had originally started, could have been the second half, the one I'm writing now, way back in 2015 before Stricken came out, and I'm here. Do I really want to do this, that, something else? I kept on setting it aside, and then Sweet Child of Mine, book 2 happened, and I thought, well, okay. I thought, during honestly, like, okay, the one character dies, we got to figure everything out, and I realized that I was not going to write this story. I didn't think I should write it, but I thought, wait a minute, baby, I better. So, like Liv, I learned I could write over a certain amount a day, like over 15,500 words in a 12-hour marathon. I was walking around as a zombie after that. My husband would ask me a question, I would just look at him like, what? But anyway, yeah, I learned that, and I learned that, yes, I can do a series. I can do a darn good series, because this series is quite popular. And I also learned that sometimes just pantsing along, not setting up a synopsis or anything like that, can turn out a really, really solid, strong story with amazing characters. I didn't think it would happen, but it did. So I guess that's what I learned from this one particular. So,
all right, Scott, what did you learn this time?
So mine was more kind of research learning. I learned far more than I wanted to about tucking, which for anybody who's not watched RuPaul's Drag Race is where you basically put the kind of stuff up and back so that you present not a meaty profile down there. I also learned the first part of the story takes place on Eros, and I don't know if any of you are fans of The Expanse. Yay! But Eros was the one where they had the proto-molecule tested, and then it took over the asteroid, and then it flung it toward Venus and crash landed on Venus, and all this stuff happened. So I was kind of excited, so I did some research on that and found out that we actually did send in the Near-Earth, I wrote it down so I get it right here, the Near-Earth Asteroid Rendezvous, NEAR, Shoemaker mission to go sample the asteroid, and actually landed it on the asteroid. So in this story, he actually passes over and you see the remains of this ship that was sent like on our time back then. So it was fun to kind of just do a lot of the detailed research stuff. And I love including some of those little things that just kind of give it that little bit of veracity, a little bit of like, this could be real thing to it. So those are kind of the things I learned. I also like went a little more in depth in drag and kind of projected how we might be doing drag differently and how people might feel about too much enhancement electronically in drag versus real drag. And so it was a lot of fun to put together, but I did a lot of drag research as well.
Well, we've stacked up the to be read piles pretty heavy this week, but
especially with that one, the multi.
Yeah, that's gonna be like the foundation. That's the bottom.
Yes, that'll hold the rest of us up. Thank you.
That was awesome.
But before we get out of here, let's make sure everybody knows where to find you, the books, websites, social media, all that kind of good stuff. So, VJ.
Okay, I'm on Facebook, Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, Instagram, BookBub, Books to Read, Decadent Publishing. I have a paranormal horror romance out with them. Really cool. I'm on a lot of sites. We just started up a new newsletter, 2 friends and I, back in March. It's called Scribes Tribune, and it's a whole bunch of us, like 14 or 15 authors currently. We're hoping to expand it, writing for one newsletter, and we give updates. We have like things that are author resources, like editors, publishers, that kind of thing. And in one area, we talk about new releases, works in progress. It depends on the author, where they are in their writing journey and stuff. I do the website and a lot of the tech things, as well as write for it. And my pal Zach, she does a lot of the graphics for it as well. So do I, because I'm also a graphics designer and artist. And Don Weiss does all the editing, everything like that. And I mean, like, everyone author-wise is welcome to join us. I mean, it's just brand new, and we're having so much fun with that. I'm there. Goodness, I'm trying to remember everywhere I am. I'm on pretty much everything, and I'm starting up. I have a website under construction right now on WordPress, so hopefully that will be up pretty soon. I have a lot on the go, so just type in VJ Allison wherever, whatever search engine, you'll find me. No worries.
Scott?
So my main home is my website. That's J. Scott Coatsworth, and that's like coats, like jackets, coats, and then worth, like how much are you worth? And yes, I was teased mercilessly about that when I was a child. You can find on there if you go to my About Me page, and there's basically what I call it a press release page, but it has all the different social media and sites that I'm on. My main one is Facebook, so you can find me on there, J. Scott Coatsworth. I'm also on Mastodon, which I love, but it's not a lot of people there. Main things I want to finish with are first of all, the River City Chronicles, Down the River, my second book. I've just started again in serial format, so if you want to follow that, that's an absolutely free read at this point on my blog once a week, every Friday. And once that is done, it'll come out as its own little book like River City. This is my own kind of thick one, in about a year and a half or so. And the other one is that Dragon Gems, which did Flawless, which again, pretty little book. They are looking for short stories. So if you write science fiction fantasy and you want to submit, they do an anthology, and then they also do a couple featured ones that are a little bit longer, like this one. So check out Water Dragon Publishing, and check out the Dragon Gems link. And Stephen Radecki will thank you.
JB?
You can find me on most social medias, Facebook and Twitter especially. I refuse to call it X. Under JB Garner Writes. Of course, also you can go to my personal website, which is also jbgarnerwrites.com. Or you can go to the publisher that's currently publishing Indomitable, and I have slated to have a few more releases this year, Ginger Blue Publishing, which is gingerbluepublishing.com.
JL?
You can find everything about me on my website, jlgribble.com, including all of the social medias, such as Facebook, my Facebook reader group, Instagram, etc., etc. That's also where you can find my very prolific review blog. And again, the first book in the series, Steel Victory, is if you would like a taste of before you commit to 7 books, that one is currently on sale. I think we made it perma on sale for 99 cents. So Steel Victory, it is not the World War II tank book.
Liv?
I am on my website, livrancourt.com. You can also find me on Facebook, Liv Rancourt, and my reader group, After Hours with Liv and Irene. I also am on Threads. I stepped away from the Bird app, and I'm on Threads, and I'm on Instagram, but really it's just garden and dog pictures, but you can come follow me there. And that's TikTok. I spent about a year and a half trying to gain traction on TikTok and didn't really. So I still show up there occasionally, but it's not with the regularity that I was.
Are there any resurrected roadkill dogs on the Instagram?
Nope.
Oh boy.
Leona?
So I've actually begun avoiding most social media except for my bookstore, The Scribbling Lion, which I'm trying to do more promotions for. For anything to do with my author writing side, you would go to my website, leonawisoker.com. For anything involving my books, which are Lies of Stone and Nothing Changes, are both self-published through The Scribbling Lion. So anything to do with those books or any others that I sell through there, you'd go to thescribblinglion.com. I am on Mastodon. I am on Mastodon under Lioness Lady at mindly.social. I love Mastodon. I think it's wonderful. It's about the only place I'm willing to be seen on social media. I have other profiles, but I really don't advertise them. I use Instagram for talking about cooking and plants and cute dog pictures. Nothing stressful. So yeah, that's where to find me.
Elle Marie?
But you can find me on my website, elmariewood.com, and the link to the books or link to any social media is there as well. I'm on Facebook and Twitter, Instagram, but not really. But if you look up El Marie Wood, you'll find me.
And I've had the pleasure of being your host, Jim Nettles, and you can find me at jamespnettles.com, authoressentialsworkshops.com, creatingprose.com, and of course here at Continual. And go stack up those to-be-read piles. We'll see you again soon.